Hey guys, it's Amanda. How are you doing? I hope you're all good. If you missed my last video, shame on you, but I will give you a quick rundown. So during all of 2019, I have committed to not buying any makeup whatsoever. So I'm doing a complete no buy year. So I was thinking that I actually wanted to kick off the year by talking about one of the palettes that I will not be buying. I've been really wanting the Gemini palette from Melt Cosmetics because I think it's quite a unique palette with a lot of colors that you don't necessarily see in a lot of other palettes. And I think that green is about to have a moment and it fits really well into that moment. So it is one of the palettes that I was considering buying, and I never got around to it because God knows why. I really don't know. But I guess I wasn't committed enough. But it is one of the few palettes that I feel that, you know, it might have been justified for me to buy because I don't have a lot of things in my collection that actually look like that. So there are some shades that I would have, you know, actually been able to say this is new to my collection. Or is it? Because I then decided to go through my collection and look for dupes and to see if I could make up my own Gemini palette out of what I already have. Obviously I haven't seen them in person, which makes it quite difficult, but I've seen enough swatches online that I thought that I could, you know, give it a pretty good go. I don't think I was 100% successful in all cases, but I also don't think that there's a need to have shades that are just like one or like even a half a shade off from each other, or like maybe they have different textures or finishes. A lot of the time the need to have all of those is just so manufactured because we've kind of been told that it makes such a huge difference. But if you think about it, when it's on the eye, nobody's going to be able to tell the difference. So I think what I found is good enough for me. And it was pretty fun exercise to go through and, you know, try and see my current collection in a bit of a new light. So I think this is something that I want to do a lot more often. I hope that there's palettes that I want to dupe throughout the year so that I can kind of see what I already have and what I could do with that. So after I had found all my dupes, I felt like I did pretty well. Even though I thought that the palette was really unique and not similar to anything that I owned, there were only a few shades that I couldn't dupe or, you know, even get close to. So I think that's a pretty good sign. The only shade that I didn't really feel that I could get a good dupe for was Leo. The one that I have, Immaculate from the Saints and Sinners palette, it does have quite a different finish and I do prefer matte eyeshadows. But as I was putting this look on, I didn't feel like, you know, my life was ruined because it wasn't a matte shadow. I want to show you which shades I found that I thought were good enough dupes for the Gemini palette that I already have, and then I want to show you how I achieved this look. So let's get started. For Luna, I used Ludwin from the Shade and Light palette, which I think is a bit less peachy and maybe a bit lighter, but overall it's a good dupe. For Gemini, I used Starfire from the Urban Decay Heavy Metals palette, which as far as I can tell was pretty spot on. For LORELEI, I used Burnt Orange from the Modern Renaissance palette by Anastasia Beverly Hills, which I don't think is a great dupe. But to be fair, I think this is one of the easier shades to dupe, so I probably do have another shade that might have worked even better if I went through my collection a bit more carefully. For POLKADOT, I used Succubus from the Shade and Light palette again, which I think is a bit darker, maybe a bit more brown, and maybe a bit more red toned as well, but I think it's fairly decent. For CUPCAKE, I used Saleos from the Shade and Light palette again. I think it's a bit darker and perhaps a bit cooler, but again I think this is one of those shades that isn't super hard to dupe, so I might even have something else in my collection that would be even closer. Bonnie is just black, and I have about 4 different black shades. For this particular swatch, I used the black from the Shade and Light palette because I already had it out, but any black will do, honestly. When it came to Leo, that was one that I really struggled to find a dupe for in my collection. I think the closest that I got was Immaculate from the Saints and Sinners palette by Kat Von D. but that has more of a satin finish rather than the matte finish of Leo. But again, I think once you apply these on your eye, the difference isn't going to be that life-changing, so I'm okay with calling them dupes even though they are not 100%. GOALZ was another one that I struggled to find a dupe for in my collection because I just don't have that many green shades. So I tried the green from the Charlotte Tilbury Rebel palette, but I just found that it was way too true green, whereas GOALZ is more of a yellowy toned warm green. So what I ended up going with was Honeymoon from the Romantic Eye palette by Too Faced, which is a really old palette. It's not a great dupe because Honeymoon is a lot more golden, it's not that warm, and it doesn't really have those green undertones. It looks a lot more green in the pan. For Fire OG, I used Military from the Jeffree Androgyny palette. And I think it's a pretty good dupe. I think when I swatched it, the way that I swatched it kind of brought out all the brown tones. So I've swatched all of these on top of concealer and then applied them with my finger. So I think that's really packed it on. Whereas if you apply Military on your eyes with a brush, which is what I normally do, that kind of brings out the green tones a bit more and they look very similar. For Mochi, I used this mustard orange from the NYX Ultimate Brights palette. It looks a lot more orange on my arm than it actually is when you apply it on the eye, but I do think that it is quite a bit more orange than Mochi is, which seems to be a more mustardy yellow, whereas I would call this mustard orange. So I'm going to start with Golden Ochre, which I'm using instead of Mochi, which is a great transition shade for me. Boop. Then I'm going to go in with Military, which I'm using instead of Fire OG. And because that hasn't quite given me the depth of colour that I wanted, I'm also going to go in with Immaculate from the Kat Von D palette, which I'm using instead of Leo. Now this is quite grungy, so I think it deserves a bit of black in the waterline. I'm using the Rock and Coal eyeliner from Charlotte Tilbury in Bedroom Black, as always. Whenever I blend my waterline out, I always start with a brush, but then I end up going in with my fingers anyway, so I'm just... I mean, sometimes it gets a bit messy, but I figure if that's where I'm gonna end up anyway, then I might as well start as I need to go on. Okay, it normally doesn't go this poorly. I swear that I know what I'm doing. But that's the beauty of makeup. You can just clean it up and move on with your life. On my eyelid, I always blend out with a brush, but it's just that for some reason underneath my eye that just doesn't work for me. It doesn't give me the look that I want. As for mascara, I'm still using Kush by Milk, which I feel, now that I've used it for a while, it is quite good. It does give you really long lashes and it smells good, which is really weird to say about a mascara, but it's the only time that I've ever noticed a mascara smelling good and I like it. The benefit of doing a grungy look like this is that you don't have to be so worried about your mascara ending up kind of everywhere. Because sometimes if you do that right, it just adds to the look anyway. Or maybe I'm just saying that to excuse the fact that I apparently can't apply my mascara properly. So there you have it. This is my bootleg Gemini look. I think it's a pretty good reminder to just go through your collection whenever you want something, unless it's something groundbreaking and new, which, let's be honest here, palette isn't going to be that groundbreaking. If you have a sizable collection, there's a good chance that you already have something in there that's going to be at least, you know, as good as whatever it is that you're eyeing. So I'm not saying that nobody should ever buy anything new. but I'm just feeling like if you bring something home and then you realize that everything in it is just kind of samey and you actually already had all of those shades or something approximately like it before, it's so disappointing because you're sat there thinking that you could have just made it up from what you own rather than, you know, getting this new thing. And sometimes it's really exciting just to get something new, so I totally understand that feeling as well. But yeah, sometimes I come home and I open my drawers and I realize that, okay, I literally already have this shade 3 times over. And that's just such an annoying feeling when you feel like you've kind of wasted your time and money on something that you already had. So that's something that I'm trying to do this year because I can't buy anything new. If there is something that I would really, really like, I'm gonna go through my collection first and see if I can dupe the shades and if I can kind of make up the same colors and that kind of thing from what I already have. And hopefully that will kind of inspire me to use the things that I already have in new and exciting ways, and maybe, you know, color combinations that I hadn't really thought of before. So I think that's going to be a fun exercise as the year goes by. We'll see how fulfilling I find it. But yeah, I think it's a fun thing to do, and I would encourage anyone to try it if they think that it sounds like fun. Then please subscribe. I would love for you to join me. Leave me a comment if there's anything in particular that you would like to see. And I will see you later. Bye.